This is The Persuasion Game, the Forges podcast all about the art of persuasion. Each episode, we connect with marketers, business leaders and beyond to learn how they use persuasion to influence their customers, convince their stakeholders and drive their businesses forward.
Hello, I am still Laura Halliday, but today you are not Simon Garnett.
I am not. I am Adam Rowles, the producer of the Persuasion Game podcast, who's normally sat on the other side of the desk, standing in for Simon today.
Adam, are you a burger man?
Do you know what? I am a burger man. Burgers are at the top of my list when it comes to takeaway, special meals. I love eating all sorts of different burgers, everything from the fastest of fast food to the most gourmet. It's the first thing I look at on the menu when I go into a pub or a restaurant, a takeaway. I really am a burger man.
It's true. It's kind of a litmus test, isn't it? If somewhere's good, like, oh, they have good burgers here.
Absolutely. And so many places have great burgers now.
Yeah.
And I'm a huge fan of where the trends have taken us into smash burgers and sliders, like smaller, more snackable burgers. Yeah, I mean, I could talk about burgers for a long time.
Clearly.
Which is good news for today, really. How about you?
I once ate 13 burgers in 7 days. I was under 10 in mitigation, but yeah, fair to say I'm a fan.
And where were you when you ate these 13 burgers?
I was in Disney World, so you can be sure they were nothing but the finest quality fare.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Okay, so perfect tee up for today. For this episode, we're really excited to have Katie Evans, the Chief Marketing Officer of Burger King UK, joining us. Katie has a deep understanding of the challenges and opportunities in this highly competitive category, and with a marketing strategy that consistently disrupts consumer behaviour and sparks conversation, we know we're going to learn a lot today. Welcome, Katie.
Hi.
Welcome. We are thrilled to have you here with us today, Katie. Perhaps you could share a little bit about your background and how you came to this role at Burger King.
Sure. I was lucky enough to start out in the Dunnhumby grad programme a million years ago.
The brain boxes.
Yeah, the analysts were definitely the brain boxes. I had a lot to learn. But yeah, I was lucky enough to start out there in a world of insight and consumer behaviour, and I guess all of the things that I was super interested in through uni, and, you know, got to actually work on, you know, new brands, new exciting small clients like Innocent, and slightly bigger ones like Warburtons and Weetabix, and, you know, take those insights to the brand teams and give them, I guess, the ammunition and the support they needed to get new products listed or, you know, launch brand plans, etc. But I think for me, I really wanted to be part of one of those brand teams, and I really wanted to get in the mix and actually apply the insight and develop the strategy and the campaigns. And so that was kind of my goal post Dunnhumby. And I moved from there to Heinz for a very short space of time, but super interesting, working on Frozen, a bit of Aunt Bessie's. And then I went from there to Krispy Kreme, which I just passed on my way here, actually.
Yes, amazing. The iconic Krispy Kreme.
Yeah.
And you were there at its inception, right?
I wasn't quite there at the inception, but I was there very early on. So it was already in Harrods.
Yes.
And was on a big, you know, new store openings program. And it was all about, I guess, establishing the brand identity in the UK and what it meant. And so really interesting. First time I'd ever managed a PR agency or, you know, creative agencies. So completely new for me. But brilliant. I was there 4 years, absolutely loved it. And then moved on to Gourmet Burger Kitchen, which is when I first got into the burger world. But again, that was a big kind of brand identity development. We did a lot of DNA work, developed a strategy, did some fairly punchy campaigns for our time. I guess that gave me a bit of a taste of things to come, but, you know, really, really exciting kind of growth time in casual dining in the UK.
Yeah.
And from there, joined Burger King back in 2018.
So the QSR and particularly like burger category is a really interesting one. And it's not something everyone that's listening will know about. Can you tell us a little bit about the dynamics of the category?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's a long established category, certainly in the QSR sector. It's very, very competitive. I think the really interesting piece for me in the QSR space is that idea that the audience is so broad. Everyone has an experience at one of the burger operators or one of the fast food chains. It's part of your life in some way, whether it's a quick trip on the way home from the pub, or something that you start your holiday with in the airport or on a road trip, or it's a big, big part of your life and actually you visit quite frequently because it provides good value for money. It's a really, really broad audience. And I think that makes it super interesting for us because, we are speaking to a really broad group of consumers with different needs, but I guess have the opportunity to then develop a menu that really suits those different types and what they're looking for. I think the casual dining space absolutely exploded back in my GBK days. The burger wars were certainly on with, the American entrants coming in and the UK brands like GBK and Byron. And it was really exciting times. And it was something very, very simple that just suddenly had queues around the door for people to come and try the next big.
It was a great time to be a consumer, I'll be honest.
Yes.
What a time to be alive.
I know. It was good. It's good. But, it has... It's really interesting for us because, in our experience as a brand, we are quite recession proof in that we have an opportunity to flex our menu and, what appears to suit those differing needs. And, I guess at a time when, the macroeconomic climate is difficult and there's a cost of living crisis, we definitely saw many people trading out of that casual dining space, which has changed quite a lot. Being quite selective with their eating out, looking for experiences for that eating out occasion, but trading into, more quick service, fast casual for that everyday, or delivery, obviously, which has grown hugely in that time. It's a different need. And actually we still play a role there. And can offer something, I guess, at the more premium end with, Angus and some of our premium provenance-led bills that satisfies that appetite or that treat. So, very interesting, dynamic category, hugely competitive. So I guess the challenge of the category is, how do you drive consideration among your consumers? How do you stay front of mind and get them to choose you?
Yes, that's the interesting piece, isn't it? Is that people are aware of your brand. It's that changing the dial to actually be like, and I'm going to choose a Burger King to really have that challenger mindset, even when you're very well established, is quite a unique challenge, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, that is one of, when it is highly competitive, obviously access to the brand is so important. We have, around 500 restaurants in the UK. Our closest competition have 3 times that. So obviously you need to be seen and you need that brand presence, but something like delivery suddenly unlocks a route to consumer that wasn't necessarily there before or wasn't there, 20 years ago. So you have ways to get there, but equally you need to, be part of that consideration, become a favorite. And, obviously your strategy is built around, how do we do that? How do we cut through especially a very noisy category and a category where there's a huge amount of investment in media? We don't necessarily have that same budget. So it's all about how do we find ways to cut through? How do we find interesting and differentiated ways to engage our consumer?
Well, I mean, your campaigns, really, really do that. You start conversations. Those conversations can take on a life of their own. What is the role in kind of using conversation and that challenger status to, punch above your weight in terms of the media spend?
I think, on the one hand, it's a bit of a necessity in my role anyway. We need to drive consideration. We need to be heard. We need to be seen. And I guess, I've been lucky enough to join a brand that is creatively brave historically. On global campaigns, you will have seen that creative bravery coming to the fore. And I think, it has given a level of permission to be brave in that way. But I guess from my perspective, it has to be relevant to the consumer. We have to have a right to play in that space. It has to be grounded in an insight and part of our strategy. So it needs to link back to, what is it we're trying to do? And I guess the conversations that it sparks are excellent. That's exactly what we want to happen. But we need to be sure that, what we're talking about and what we're communicating very clearly links back to our brand and is not just, being noisy or provocative for the sake of it. It has to be grounded in a level of insight, but also a brand strength and for us to know that we have a role in that conversation or in that cultural space.
So you've talked a little bit about the underlying strategy that underpins a lot of the tactics you go for, and I think you call it foodfillment. Is that right?
That's right.
Can you tell us a little bit about foodfillment? So
foodfillment was a piece of work that we started last year. It obviously isn't a word. We hope it is now. But foodfillment was very much grounded in an insight around that ultimate food satisfaction. We did a lot of research. We spoke to a really broad church of consumers and our consumers and competitor consumers to really understand, what is it they feel when they experience a BK. And it came down to, I guess, the definition that we developed. To summarize, I guess, what was being said was that kind of warm, fuzzy feeling of total food satisfaction. And that is something we believe is unique to Burger King. Our hero, iconic product is the Whopper. Whopper means big. It's unashamedly big. It's a bold product. There's a reason it's been on our menu for so long. It's everything that we believe epitomizes our brand in terms of, big, bold flavors, fresh ingredients. It's made to order. However, I think that foodfillment piece is not just about the Whopper, it's about all aspects of our menu. And that sense that, for different people, foodfillment, it's not just about size, it's also about that feeling of getting great quality at the right price and good value for money and going away with that, very satisfied feeling. So the campaign, I guess that's the platform for our strategy. We started earlier this year with our foodfillment campaign, 3 different TV ads that we continue to roll. It continues to develop from there, really.
So, talking of foodfillment, your most recent campaign with post-Labour mothers really took on a life on its own on marketing LinkedIn. How do you manage that when a campaign kind of really captures a conversation point in the public?
I mean, look, I guess any campaign we run, or any campaign any brand runs has, kind of goes out there and lives a life in that it's all about the public or consumer perception of that piece of work. I guess in this case, we wanted to run this campaign because it was grounded in a very real insight that we found with many examples and images of mums tucking into a burger post-birth, and that real kind of hunger that sits with many mums after, anything from 16 to, 30-something hours of labour. And
52.
52, okay. 52,
she said pointedly to her son.
16 feels short.
56.
But you didn't do it.
I didn't do it. I was there, though. I was there.
Sorry, apologies, listeners.
Yeah, it was a very real insight. And for us, it was something that we had seen a few years ago. But with this platform of foodfillment and that ultimate, hunger, food satisfaction, it felt really appropriate. We wanted to capture the moment in a very real, authentic way. We didn't stage it. There was no photo shoot. These were real images taken by the partners of the women involved. And everything we do as a brand is incredibly authentic. It's very real. And this just felt like a very good representation of a moment of foodfillment. I think the conversation it sparked, the debate it sparked was unexpected. We expected it to drive, yes, some conversation and some reaction, but not the debate, around what a woman should or shouldn't be eating post-birth or how capable she was of making her own decisions. That was unexpected for all of us, but super interesting to see what a cultural topic it drove, particularly on LinkedIn. And it started there, but it then moved into national press, and from there into Instagram and
Yes, it was really interesting to see almost a sort of dialogue that was going on that was related to the topic, but kind of building on it and taking it in a new direction. So actually you're seeing a lot of mum influencers kind of responding to a sort of what they saw as a sort of some strands of patriarchal response, and making sort of comedy with that and really like playing with this idea in a way that's sort of far beyond what your original conversation was about. How do you guys feel about that when a conversation evolves beyond what you've set up? How comfortable are you with sort of letting it live in the wild like that?
I think in this scenario we were very comfortable. It was really intriguing to see how the conversation played out. Clearly, we were following it closely, and not needing to jump in. That wasn't really our role. Once we released the ad, that's that. It's not really our role to jump into that conversation, because your perception of the ad is not in our control. But the intention was very much to capture that real moment, and it all tied back to our platform and our strategy around food fulfillment. So, I think it is great to be part of a cultural debate. It is great to show up on a topic where people have an opinion and they want to share that. I think any brand wants to be part of a conversation, as long as, I guess, it's the right conversation. And actually, the conversation that played out didn't really have a huge amount to do with us. It took on a life of its own. But I also saw, a huge amount of positive feedback around, and the sentiment was majority positive, that we were celebrating this moment, which felt for many of the women who commented like a very real representation of that hunger. It may not have been a burger in every case. NHS toast seemed to play a big role. For some, it was sushi. But we don't sell sushi, so that's obviously not what we were going to show. But that, for some, it's burgers, and that, it captured that, and it tapped into a moment that many, many related to.
I think what I hadn't appreciated was that these are real photos taken by this is not a sort of art directed piece, and it felt like that was really reflected in the positive responses, but even in the less positive ones, it was like, oh, this is too intimate. And it felt like you've got some authenticity there, haven't you? You've really captured something that's not stage managed. Mm-hmm. How important is that kind of authenticity to your brand, and what are the other ways that you sort of seek to communicate it?
I think it's about, we always talk, it's about real food, real people. We have, obviously, you record an advert. At times you have actors involved. It's not always about that. But I think where we can, it's quite nice to represent reality. And I think for many, if you look across social media now, some of the most loved, liked, engaged posts are with very real user-generated content, not the airbrushed, polished, perfect, images that we would have seen in the past. So I think there is a generation of people who respond well to that very real representation. And we don't do it all of the time, but, when we engage in reactive, this campaign wasn't a reactive piece. We planned it for many months, but when we do engage in reactive PR or things like that, it's naturally very real and authentic. And, that's the route we take.
Now, being a very cynical strategist, I looked at that campaign and I thought about how well it tapped into lots of cultural conversations that we see happening at the moment. So whether that's women's positivity, our hero NHS, showing things that are sort of real and raw. And I wonder how much was it about identifying those trends and saying, we want to be part of that conversation, or was it something different?
I mean, no. It was not about looking at that trend. I mean, what has played out makes it look like that's where we started. But actually, we started with the insight that came from, seeing images being shared on social media of women enjoying a burger post-birth. And that is where it started. And we saw it some years ago, and we revisited it off the back of the food fulfillment platform, because for us it represented this very real human truth that hunger post-birth, and that, I guess, what played out from there, I I guess, shows that it absolutely did tap into a trend around, how women feel about themselves and how in control they feel or should feel about what they eat and when they eat it. But it was not the intention. It was not a trend-led piece at all. And I think sometimes, I think some brands do that very, very well. I think how we executed the campaign by being confident enough to show that real, those real images, I think that probably inadvertently, yes, played into a comfort that people have now with seeing that real, authentic view and not always seeing this perfectly polished representation of how it should look when you've just had a baby.
Super refreshing.
Have you got anything you can share about the success of that campaign and how it cut through with the public? Have you got any numbers that have come through?
I mean, it certainly drove talkability and buzz and conversation. The sentiment was majority positive, which is important, but there was a lot of neutrality around the campaign as well. But it drove conversation and it drove a focus on the brand, and we were part of that conversation to a certain extent, even if the online community seemed to police themselves. But at this stage, it's very much a brand campaign. I guess we will see over time what impact it has.
I think what I loved as well is it really drove awareness of the Whopper, which seems to have been, a real force in Burger King UK strategy for a long time. Don't forget about the Whopper, and you look at the size of it, you look at the hunger on the face, it definitely makes you remember like the kind of hero product, doesn't it?
Yeah. And Whopper will always be a big part of our strategy. It is our icon. It represents our strengths. So yeah, there is more to come. We've got more planned for next year on Whopper as well. So we're excited about that.
Fantastic.
So it's clear there's a really robust strategy that everybody is very much aligned behind. But at the same time, you're acting in a very agile way and turning around ideas, responses, executions very quickly, sometimes as short as 8 weeks, for example, for things like the Meltdown. Could you tell us a little bit about some of that work you've done and the ethos behind it?
Yeah, I mean, I would say agility is definitely one of our strengths. We are a relatively small team. I won't share the numbers, but I think people would be surprised how small our teams are. And I guess it has always felt a little bit like a startup mentality, but with the keys to a very big brand. We have over 98% brand awareness. We have a responsibility, but equally we are all very clear on the job we need to do. And our agencies are also very clear and have worked with us for a long time and got on board with our style of working and how we work. And, we are very clear on our objectives. So I think sometimes there's a perception that to be that reactive, you're doing bits and pieces here and there and there's no kind of common objective or plan or flow to it. We're very grounded in our plan. But I think because of that, we are then very comfortable when an opportunity presents itself or an idea shows up. We're very comfortable in making decisions and making them quickly. Meltdown, I guess, is another example of an insight that came to us. There were 2 girls who pulled together a petition to ask the big QSRs, they got picked up on BBC, to ask the big QSRs to remove plastic toys from their kids' meals. I guess, again, we're completely in a challenger space in that area. There's a very well-known kids' meal out there and it's not ours. But we also were looking at how could we create more, at the same time we had been looking at how do we create a more sustainable answer to what appears in our kids' meal. How can we move from this kind of plastic toy to a much more sustainable solution? And there were lots of developments and brilliant paper toys and activities for kids, and it was something that we knew we wanted to do. I guess that decision was fast-tracked by this petition that these girls were, putting their all into. And we got in contact with them and we said, we hear you and we understand, your reasons for this. And their perception is, these toys end up in the footwell of the car and no one plays with them. And, they end up
as waste. Have they seen my car?
And mine. So, we said, well, look, there is an opportunity for us to, do what we were planning to do anyway, but do it quickly and do it as quickly as we possibly can. And that required a lot of internal collaboration, communication, persuasion, everything that goes with how are we going to do this? How do we do it in the right way as quickly as possible and effectively overnight remove plastic toys from our kids' meals?
It's fascinating because to me, there's two things there. There's one, an attitude, which is a kind of, yeah, why not, rather than feeling defensive about it. But two, there's the kind of ability to execute that. I mean, you are a big established brand, but you did manage to turn this around really quickly. Can you tell us a bit about how you enabled that?
I think, because we are a relatively small team, there's a lot of conversations. We're in the office a lot. This was pre-pandemic. We still are now, post-pandemic. But, we got the right people in the room involved. We said there is an opportunity for us to move first here. And I guess there is always going to be with any challenger brand, that drive, we have an opportunity to do something and do it before the competition for the right reasons. And it is a direction that we've all agreed that we already, that we want to do, or a direction we want to take longer term. Why can't we do this sooner? And what do we need to put in place to make that happen? And it's very much the people involved are, incredibly supportive, and we're all pushing in the same direction, and everybody could see the opportunity it presented. And, I think that makes those conversations so much easier. And not every idea, opportunity that presents itself will be a winner or, work as quickly as that. But the insight was there, the opportunity was there. We knew we wanted to do it, and we found a way to make it happen, working across multiple teams collaboratively to achieve it. And we were so proud that we were able to do it. It generated more PR globally than any campaign that I'm aware of. It was picked up everywhere, and we're really, really proud to have delivered it. But it very much was a team effort. And I guess that agility is something that we very much see as a strength. Yes, we are grounded in insight, and yes, we have a clear strategy, but sometimes opportunities just present. When we put Whopper on the side of a bus going over Westminster Bridge, announcing that
to what could you be referring?
There must be an election. That was an idea presented itself. We said, right, how can we make it work? What do we do? All of the conversations took place on WhatsApp with our agencies, and we turned it around on a very low budget very quickly. Not all campaigns work like that, but the opportunity to do those things when they present themselves, when that idea was a BBH idea as well, when they present themselves, you say, right, let's give it a go. And we did. And again, that came up again this year for suddenly the pictures were resurfacing again at the last election, which was fun.
Katie, you've talked a lot about insight, and you clearly value it a lot. And there is something in marketing that we can all agree, which is the more senior you get, the further you get away from your consumers and the people that are actually buying your products. What are you doing to keep yourself closer to the people at the end of the decision and make sure the stuff that you're doing is for real, real interactions with real people?
I think we obviously have access to insights, category insights, consumer insights. We run research projects, focus groups to really understand what people think around specific things, be it new product launches or menu changes, etc. But I think for anyone who works in this space or any consumer space, it's all around you all of the time. I mean, we are surrounded by social media platforms where people are sharing these insights freely in terms of images or TikToks, or the trends are there, the content is there, and this user-generated content, well, we don't totally rely on that. It certainly creates insights and real human behaviors and shows those for all of us. So my whole team are tapped into that, but equally our agencies, many of the ideas that they present are born out of real insights and behaviors that are shared on social media. And I think, that's what makes this so exciting, because they change so often. It moves so quickly that actually, you could run 3-4 research projects before you get to that specific insight. And I think those human insights, some of them are fleeting, some of them are, maybe sit in a space that you don't think is directly related to your category. Therefore, in that piece of market research you have put out there, maybe you're not asking the right questions. I think consumers will show up in those spaces very comfortably, happy to share, what they're doing. I'll give you an example. Many, many people on social media will talk about that Burger King meal they have in the airport before they go on holiday. It is a cultural part of that ritual of going on holiday, that they go to the airport, they have a Burger King, and then they fly off to that destination. I never knew that. I know the brand is present in many, many airports, but I never knew that was such a ritual for so many people. And these things, tend to show up in those spaces. And I think we need to understand, at a deeper level, we need to understand consumers' behaviours and consumer behaviours and how they interact with our brand, the menu and, what we're doing day to day. But equally, it's these nuggets of real insight that you pick up in social and in other places and in conversations. And I think, being open to that is important.
And I think what's great about that is it's on paper, an occasion. You could say, I can put this on my occasion map, but actually it's tapping into so much more. It's tapping into emotion. It's tapping into a better understanding of who your audience are and how they want to feel. So it's giving you so much more creative fodder as well, rather than just going, this is one occasion that we'll put on a framework and we'll size. It's actually taking it to a lot of implications for you as well, creatively.
Yeah. And I think the brands who embrace that and listen, because yes, you can arrange a focus group, but the environment is very different to the environment where someone is comfortable to share in their own space. And consumers are sharing more than they've ever shared. We all are, and I think it's a very real way to understand, what your consumers think of your product and, how they interact with it. Yeah, what those real actual occasions are rather than the kind of, named research occasions.
Spontaneous consumption moment 4.
Exactly.
I love those ones.
And it brings it to life, because it's actual real life, maybe in a filtered, beautiful Instagram way, who knows? But, it's there. And I think it's about connecting with that.
Well, Katie, this has been such an illuminating conversation. Thank you so much for sharing such interesting and candid insights with us. We really appreciate it.
Really, really appreciate it. Thanks for coming on, Katie.
Thank you for having me.
So, Adam, your first interview on the podcast, what were your key takeouts from it?
Well, that was brilliant, wasn't it? A really, really good interview.
Yes.
Katie is just, what a fantastic
super engaging
speaker, and really engaging. We learned a lot. For me, I think the most interesting thing for me going into this was I thought that Burger King was a really reactive business, a business that was always jumping on, kind of political commentary.
Very good at tactics, maybe.
Very, very good at tactics. And actually what was really interesting to learn was just the kind of strategic foundations and fundamentals, the bedrock that they've built all of that on, is there, which allows them to, when something comes up, jump on it because they know who they're for, the occasions they're trying to target, the reason they exist, the reasons why the consumers might eat their burgers over their competition. And so when an opportunity arises, they're ready to take on that moment.
It's like that lens of foodfulfillment being a way of looking at the world, but then looking really expansively.
Absolutely. And then I think second to that was there is an agility bit to their organisation. They really are very agile. And, what she was saying about being able to respond incredibly quickly with their agencies to the kind of tactical opportunities as they arise. I think a lot of marketers that listen to this will be looking at that thinking that's something that they should try and replicate because it really is inspiring.
Yeah. I think for me, what was really inspiring was how human-centric and how consumer-centric she's obviously been throughout her career. It's very telling that she started her career at dunnhumby and having that lens of what do people actually want, what moves the needle in terms of consumer behaviour was really interesting. I think what that enables the brand to do is really find points of resonance. So even when you're looking at occasions, you're doing that with an emotional lens as well as like a very clear understanding of like the functionality of that space. For example, their recent advertising, like so many of their campaigns, has got a lot of traction. I think that's because it really taps into authenticity, but in a genuine way, because it's based on real human insight.
Absolutely. And I think it's clear, and I mean, her background at dunnhumby, I think it's clear that she is very interested in that human insight. It's something that came through in the conversation loud and clear. It's something that comes through their comms and their marketing loud and clear, is they're very, very close to what consumers are looking for. And I do wonder if part of that is also about the GBK background. When you work in a retail environment, when you work in a restaurant business, you're very close to customer feedback all the time.
You get it all the time.
You have an instant kind of feedback loop, which is, I think, you can see that running through the way that she works now.
Yeah, fantastic.
Thanks for listening. If you'd love to hear more from marketers, entrepreneurs and business leaders about how to use the art of persuasion to drive your business forward, then make sure you're following the podcast in your favourite podcast app. And just a last ask from us. This is a new podcast, and we'd love it if you could be persuaded to help us spread the word by telling somebody else about it, leaving us a review, or even better, sharing an episode on social media. Search The Forge on LinkedIn.